I wish the rain would stop just once.
Can't rain all the time.
Eric?
Hello, welcome back to Ycft. This is a really warm day for us to be dressed like this, but we had to. We had to try and match the aesthetic of The Crow.
Time travelling back to the early 90s for this one.
To 1994. This is a very special movie for you. I think I've actually only watched, this was only the second time I'd watched it. You introduced this one to me a couple of years ago, and I really, really liked it. The movie's set in Detroit on a night called Devil's Night, which is a night where basically fires are set. It's a night of chaos. It's a night of murder, robbing, all the bad stuff.
Anarchy.
Absolute anarchy. And Brandon Lee's Eric Draven returns home to find his wife is being tortured and his fiance, they were going to get married like the next day or something, is being assaulted, and they are both killed. Cut to a year later, and Eric returns from the grave, by the power of this mysterious crow that we see throughout the movie, and he becomes this sort of avenging angel, wanting to, well, avenge his own death and the death of his fiance, but he can't quite remember everything. He has to interact with people from that night to retrieve more of his memories of what has happened. And he takes revenge on them, one by one.
One by one.
But he is basically immortal.
He's come back for this one purpose alone.
This one purpose alone.
Yeah.
And this movie's pretty badass, to be honest. Like, watching it this time specifically, I can see how Christopher Nolan was inspired by it. For the entire Dark Knight trilogy, there's something in each one of those films that directly correlates to a scene in this movie. The Matrix was definitely inspired by a lot of the action scenes. Obviously, Brandon Lee was the son of famous martial artist Bruce Lee, so he did a lot of the action scenes and choreographed a lot of stuff. But it's a lot of the fighting with guns around the tables and mixing it in with some hand-to-hand combat. It's like, this is very Matrix. And didn't his stunt double go on to direct John Wick?
Chad Stahelski, he went on to direct all of the John Wick movies.
So we can see it had a massive inspiration on the John Wick movies as well.
I think we got to talk about Chad a little bit later on, because praise where praise is due. Yeah.
This movie is often regarded as a cursed movie, and to be honest, a lot of what we watched about it, I think a lot of the cast and crew are kind of offended by that because they think it takes away from the performances.
Yes.
Because a lot of unlucky stuff did happen around the set of this movie. Like crew that were electrified and burned. There was a hurricane.
Yes.
But most famously, Brandon Lee was shot on set.
Yes.
Very, very tragically. And we're not talking, I think a lot of people have talked about this recently because of what happened on the set of Rust. But they're two very, very different situations.
Yeah.
Do you want me to explain how it happened?
Yeah, if you don't mind, because I've heard the story so many times, but I always still get a little bit confused because I don't know guns. I don't really know the mechanics that well. And from going online, I think there's a lot of confusion as well. Some people are like, no, this happened. And some people are like, no, it wasn't that. It was this happened. All I can tell you is that Brandon was shot on day 47 of a 52-day shoot. Yeah, so they were very close to
They shot 85% of the movie. Yes. A lot of the scenes he hadn't done were early on in the movie.
Yes.
So what happened? The scene is when Eric comes home and finds...
It's in the flashbacks.
It's in the flashbacks, which, let's be fair, probably weren't going to be flashbacks originally.
Maybe not.
And I always find it strangely poetic that Brandon died in the moment where Eric would die.
Yes.
And whereas Eric went on to, be immortalized as the Crow, this immortal avenging angel, Brandon was immortalized in film. I know I find that really poetic.
It is. I've never
tragic.
Considered that before. I always assumed Brandon was killed in another scene. I had it wrong for so many years, so my mind was a little bit blown when I found out it was this bit.
It's the scene when he comes through the door, and what was the name of the actor who was holding the gun?
Michael Massey, who plays Fun Boy.
Plus, he carried this for a long time. It's not his fault. He may have pulled the trigger, but it is not his fault.
No. But he was very obviously very deeply affected by it.
Yeah, he was traumatized by it.
Yeah, he stopped acting for a year after this.
Yeah, there's a lot of theories that the studio Miramax were cutting corners. I mean, it's not like the Weinsteins to cut corners, is it? Mm-hmm. The armourer was a freelancer. So I'm pretty sure the state they were in wasn't a union state.
No, James Moyer.
So he was sent home. They deemed that he wasn't needed on this day
because
the shot was very routine.
Yeah, they didn't.
Continue to have scenes like with lots of guns going off later in the scene. Like that's we need an armor because there's so much going on here. This type of scene, they probably thought, oh, we can get away with this. Always have your armor.
Moral of the story.
Always have your armor. Yeah. The situation is very unique because it's not one person's fault. It's lots of little mistakes that built up to it. So, whenever the gun had last been used, it had a dummy round in it, which is a round which is just meant to look like a regular bullet. And with a revolver, anyone knows the guns, you can still see the bullets are loaded, so you need to have something in there, or you also need it for the weight, for a realistic action. Mm-hmm. Dummy bullets are basically real bullets with the powder and the primer, which is the bottom part of the bullet, taken out, which is what the firing pin hits. In a regular bullet, firing pin hits the primer, which causes basically a chain reaction, which forces the cap to go forward. And then the casing is ejected. Sorry, just metaphorically shot you for this one. So, with the dud bullet that they were using, the primer hadn't been removed. So the firing pin hit the primer, and a force of air forced the cap off, and it got lodged in the barrel. So that obviously didn't hurt anybody. That could have been on this shoot, that could have been on a previous shoot. Whoever had handled that gun last hadn't checked the barrel afterwards. And that's a mixture of they had a bad round, and someone didn't check the gun. Now, the armourer probably would have checked all weapons at the beginning of that take if he was there. Like I've handled a lot of rifles. I've been in Air Cadets, I've been in the TA. At least what the English do is every time I remember being part of my rifle exam, as I got told to go in and pick up a rifle, and it's actually secretly part of the test because of what you're supposed to do is open it up and check that it's safe. That's what should have been done on that day. You always check that the gun is safe. And if someone had picked it up and checked it, they would have seen that there's no air going through the barrel and that there's something lodged in it. Mm-hmm. So they loaded the blank round. Now, a blank round does have a primer and does have gunpowder, but it's basically got like essentially a bit of paper at the end. When I was demonstrated, because I've run around, I've fired blanks before. They're often used for realism more than anything, because it gives the gun a realistic kick. You still get like a flash. A lot of the time, the casing will still come out. But the guy, he put a box on the end of the bullet box on the end of the gun, basically explained to us that in any scenario, or very rare scenarios, a blank round can kill. Mm-hmm. And he fired it, and the box just exploded because there's still like air projecting out of it. So if you hit someone like point blank, you could definitely do some damage with it. So they put the blank bullet in, not seeing that the cap, which wouldn't be on the blank, was in the barrel. So when he shot, hit the primer, gunpowder goes off, and that force then hits the cap that's lodged in, propelling it forward and turning it into a real bullet. And that's what shot Brandon. The odds of that happening, it's kind of insane that just so many little things that had to go wrong for that to happen.
The thing I learned as well recently is that Michael Massey, I think, has spoken about the fact that there was a very last-minute change on that day because he wasn't even a character that was supposed to be holding the gun. So I think it was just that morning director decided, no, we'll do it a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. So Michael Massey has spoken about that. It is worth saying that, because it was a take, like they were filming when it happened, none of that footage makes it into the finished movie.
Which I think is also a rumour that's out there, is that the shot is in the film, but it's not true.
Brandon being killed on screen. No, of course you can't.
The police have that footage.
Yeah, all of the footage from that day was sent to the police. As I don't know if they still have it. I don't know if it was destroyed.
It'll be in evidence somewhere.
When they came back, when they decided, right, we are going to finish this film, they just rewrote that entire sequence. So, yeah, it's a good point, actually, because from what we see in the film, it's told in flashback. That might have been different in the original take. We don't know. But none of the tragedy is you can't see it on
I think what's important to point out is Brandon's fiancé
and his family
wanted them to finish the film.
Yeah.
Because he saw... I think he'd been in a fair few films. So this was his launch pad.
Yes, absolutely.
He was very, very proud of it. So they wanted that performance to be seen by people.
Yeah.
Otherwise, essentially, he would have died for nothing then.
Alex Proyas, the director, and from what I understand, the producers as well, they did shut down production. And I think they were going to shelve the movie because they, we can't, we just can't. We don't want to get back on set, even if we can finish this film. We don't want to. But it was Eliza, his fiance, and his mum that said he was very proud of the performance that he was giving in the movie. He was very excited about it. Please, can you finish it? Please, can you get this film released so we can see what he was doing? Yeah. So that, as far as I know, that is the main reason that they decided to come back.
Yeah.
I've got a list. A general rule of thumb: if we can't see Brandon's face, it's a double. It's Chad Stileski, the John Wick guy. They did use some CGI, some shots. So
I think it's one shot they did it. It's when he stood in the window. And to be honest, it's for 94, that looks very good.
I think there might be another one. So yeah, after he's put on the costume and he walks towards the window, CGI. But then when he's on the ground dead after falling out of the window, I think that is a CGI face as well, potentially. Or they did make a mask.
Which apparently was very creepy.
They did not like that.
Yeah, it was the special effect. The makeup guy who'd done the makeup all the way through and was in charge of the continuity of that, he had to make a mask for Chad to wear.
Yeah, it's very ominous.
Because he only did look a lot like Brandon anyway. He was the same height as him. So ultimately, it's weird to think that, like, I always class when he comes back to the loft to put on the makeup as a really iconic scene, and it's not Brandon.
So again, I've seen this movie a lot. It's kind of like a childhood favorite, as dark as it is. I adore it. My knowledge, however, of it was very. I clearly didn't know enough about it. That is one of my all-time favorite scenes. Is Brandon when he's coming back and he's touching things and he's getting the memories and he goes crazy. He punches the mirror and he does his makeup. I always thought that was Brandon. Now I watch it and it makes sense that we don't see his face because that wasn't Brandon in the shoot. But what I always thought was the reason we don't see his face is because there's going to be a grand reveal of the face. It's still Brandon. They were just, we're waiting for the right moment before we actually see what, his makeup, like the final look. So that blew my little mind. I
think because we were debating as we were watching, because I was saying, I don't think this is Brandon. You said, no, I think it is. The scene comes later. I'm like, I'm pretty positive.
Yeah, you were right. But I also, the CGI is used in a couple of scenes, but the body double, Chad, that whole scene where Eric comes home for the first time in the loft, putting on the makeup. All the scenes where he comes home and the gang are in the apartment and they're assaulting Shelley. When he gets shot out the window. Any scene in the apartment where we don't see his face, so the scene where he interacts with Sarah, running across the rooftops, is a body double.
I think that was always going to be a body double, though.
Probably.
I think that was actually already shot before he was shot.
And T-Bird's death, the guy in the car.
Yeah.
That was a body double.
Oh, that was as well?
That was a body double. So I just...
Basically, scenes that don't include dialogue.
Yes. I do just want to give props to Chad Stileski because he does deserve a ton of credit because he got Brandon's body language
down. Oh, he did.
To me, unless I'd have researched this properly, I would not have known.
I think what clocked it for me was, I think it was the hair. I felt like the hair felt more like a wig.
Yeah.
And then after, when I put that together with, I've not seen his face in a little while.
I read as well something really sad that when they were doing those scenes with Chad, like after Brandon had passed, whenever they yell cut, Chad would just kind of like quietly go off to the side because he knew he was kind of freaking people out with
the mask,
the appearance and stuff. So he just kind of like slipped
I gotta say, the face mask they made looked incredible.
Yes,
it's almost like weirdly it kept making me think of Poltergeist 3. Obviously,
yeah,
she died, but also because the guy who played the bad guy in the second film had passed away, they had the actor wear his death mask.
Yeah, they did.
For the next one.
Yeah,
weird.
Fuck,
yeah, really creepy. And I can see why that would be off-putting. But I kept thinking, how different would this film be if he hadn't died? Because I think a lot of the bizarre editing choices and telling the story through flashbacks that are dead cutty, and I think that's been a choice they've had to make because of the scenario. And it's weird. Like, I know the film did pretty well, but it still fell into like the cult classic collection. Would it have done that well if it had played out the way it was supposed to? I actually weirdly think they made a better movie.
Potentially.
And that feels horrible to say, but this movie has such an identity with things that we're always going to be saying, like the performances, the settings.
Yeah.
I think all the bad guys in this are hamming it up so much in the best way. But the unique editing choices that I think very much inspired a lot of films into the 2000s, like the choppy editing style, kind of also helped this film stand out for its time.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't have been a thing.
I agree.
And we know that Michael Berryman was supposed to play a role in this. He was to play a character called the Skull Cowboy.
Yeah.
I'd never heard this. And he had full body cast, like with a
fantastic.
a face with animatronic parts in it that would move. And he was meant to be someone else who had been a crow. And he'd shot some scenes with Brandon, and he was supposed to come back to shoot more scenes. And he's essentially the exposition to him, explain what it means to be a crow, what the rules are.
There are rules.
A lot of rules to it.
Yeah.
And also, this is based off a graphic novel as well, for anyone who didn't realise.
Yeah.
And you tell me, the author of that had a very tragic
I'll chat about
life
that
as well.
Yeah.
So after Brandon died, they realised that it couldn't work. The scenes they had left with the Skull Cowboy were too dialogue heavy to be able to do it with Chad.
Get out of my way.
You risked everything. I took that risk and lost.
That's your story.
So they cut him out entirely and just had Sarah do a voiceover, which I really do think works. But they had to change the rules of the crow, because Skull Cowboy says after he kills everyone who was involved that night, he really doesn't need to go after the big bad of all the gangs.
No.
And he says, if you do that, you'll end up like me. You'll be forced to stay on this land and you will rot away.
Yeah.
None of that is in the movie.
No.
That, again, would completely change the rules, would have made it a very different movie.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes me think, is that something that's going to be included in the new Crow?
Don't know. We didn't see Skull Cowboy in the trailer,
No,
did we?
we saw everything else.
Yeah.
We have said the trailer for the new Crow, I want to be optimistic, but the trailer didn't wow me. The makeup, I get why he looks so different. He looks, if he's meant to be a musician, like he is playing Eric, it doesn't make sense for him to look like a musician from the 90s. He's going to look like a musician from
That's a fair point.
now.
Yeah, that is.
My issue with the trailer is we see so much of the story in the trailer that we know it's probably just going to play. It's not going to play out in flashbacks. It looks like it is just going to play out. Also, the lighting and the setting just looks very uninspired compared to the original one. I don't know. I'm hopeful. I'm now that I know that this is a character that's a big part of the graphic novel. It's a big part of what they wanted this film to have. Maybe that's what they're holding out on in this new Crow.
I think from having now learning what I've learned about, you know, the original intentions of the movie and how drastically they did have to alter things around losing Brandon, I am now conscious of the fact that this new movie is going to maybe tell the story as it is laid out in the graphic novel in a way that the original just simply couldn't, because they lost their main lost their main actor. So I am curious about that. It's not going to be a carbon copy of just remaking the 1994 movie. It's going to be telling the graphic novel.
Yeah, which they have said it is maybe more of a direct adaptation of the graphic novel.
Which will be interesting. You've got to give it the benefit of the doubt,
think,
right? It's
I think what's putting a lot of people off. Now, there have been sequels to The Crow, and none of them have been received particularly well.
Yeah.
But they're not playing Eric. They play a new character. I think what throws a lot of fans of The Crow is Bill Skarsgård, who is a great actor. He is playing Eric.
Yeah.
Brandon is Eric. But also, it has been 30 years.
It has been 30 years. Fuck me.
Yeah, it's been 30 years. I want to give it the benefit of the doubt.
We have to. We got to go and say it. Let's reserve judgment.
You had never seen the test footage, because this reboot has been in the works for a very long time. You'd never seen the test footage with Jason Momoa.
No, I laughed when I found out that Jason Momoa was in talks to play Eric, and I was like, what the fuck? No. What are you doing? What are you doing to this franchise? Oh my god.
But the test makeup on him.
And then I saw footage, and I flat out refused to believe that was Jason Momoa. Incredible.
He's got a similar style jaw. He usually has a beard.
It's always disguised by a beard.
The lighting that they chose for the test footage as well, I thought it's different from The Crow, but it's very stylized as well. But he looks the part.
Yes, he did.
He really does.
I do have to say that he does. I'm going to choose to withhold judgment from the new movie until I've been to see it. I really doubt that I'm going to fall in love with it in the way that I have, the original, but I don't know. We will see.
Yeah.
I do just want to revisit something that you said earlier about how it sounds awful to say it, but, the way that they edited around the footage that they had actually maybe turned it into, ultimately a very special movie. I just wanted to say I really agree, because the action sequences, the revenge sequences are awesome, and I love them. I love seeing Eric, in rage mode and when he's playful. But for me, the flashbacks with Shelley and those sweeter moments that he has with Sarah, and those just the more kind of intimate moments where he's just Eric, and he's has to sit with what's going on and why he's back and all of that, the more emotional side of it.
I wish the rain was out just once.
Can't rain all the time.
Eric?
That's what I remember from the movie. I remember this tortured guy.
Well, one of my favourite scenes is the scene he has in Ernie Hudson's apartment, where he said he's just a guy. It's really nice. The action sequences, they are very well. I mean, Bruce Lee's son. He's going to do good action scenes.
The action scenes are great. I can't fault them. But for me, the heart of this movie, it is those more downcast, more sad moments. There's so much pathos to this character.
So I think if the film had gone the way it was supposed to, I think we would have seen a lot more of Shelley.
Yeah, I think there were more scenes.
But some of the film manages to really balance it. Shelley isn't really a character, that we see a lot, but her presence is felt throughout the movie through Eric and his quest for vengeance.
Yeah,
and that is such a hard thing to balance.
Oh, totally. Yeah,
And ultimately, I think this film holds up very well. You got some datedness to certain effects, but it's stylish. Very much has its own identity. I think the story is kind of timeless. It's it's a really good time. And I think if you watch this without knowing, the tragedy, I think you would still have a ton of fun with this movie. And
you can.
It surprised me. There's still a large proportion of people who do not know about this film. And a lot of people might not even realise that the new movie coming out is a remake.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm hoping that with it being the 30th anniversary, this is a new run of the Blu-ray. I know there's another special edition 4K one coming out. And with the new movie, a lot more people might discover it.
Yeah.
All the streamers will be trying to make deals to see, can we have it on ours in the build-up to it? So hopefully the fan base is going to continue to grow.
I think so. I hope so. I think one good thing about the remake, at least, not the remake, but this new adaptation, is it will get people curious about the 1994 movie.
Yeah.
Which, is something.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about the author?
James O'Barr is the creator of the comic novel. It first was released in 1989, I think. And it's important to mention, obviously, the origins, but also, I did not know that what the inspiration was behind the story for this. It's rooted in tragedy, kind of aptly. So I guess James O'Barr had a very tragic childhood. He was in and out of foster homes. I think he was abused as a kid within the foster care system and the various families that he was living with at the time, which is where we get the character of Sarah from, I guess, who comes from this, really horrible broken home with a mother that's very distant. I don't think she's called Sarah in the comic. I think she's called something else, but Sarah in the movie. But what specifically prompted writing the comic was James's fiance, who I think he'd been with for about 3 years, was killed by a drunk driver. And James obviously just fueled all of this anger, this hurt, this sadness into the comic, and ultimately create this character where his number one quest was just for vengeance. And ultimately as well, there is a sweetness in that Eric and Shelley are reunited at the end, and obviously it's poor James is just trying to weave this happy ending that he was denied himself. It's rooted in tragedy. This whole story from start to finish, even if its inception is born out of a tragedy. It's very sad. But yeah, I just thought it was important to talk about that, the origins.
One of my favourite moments is, outside of the scene with Ernie Hudson, is when he goes to the porn dealer. And he starts quoting Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Brandon's performance really is like top notch, and
yeah.
let's be fair, it absolutely inspired the Joker.
Tell them Eric Draven sends his regards.
Walk out of here. They're gonna erase your sorry ass. You're nothing but street grease, Eric. Street grease, you motherfucker.
I got notes for
Go.
Dark Knight joke or just in general. Like
Dark Knight specific.
All right, well, okay. So yeah, as I say, I've seen this movie like from when I was a kid, but I only rewatched The Dark Knight like fairly recently with you after a really long gap of not seeing it. So
An obsession followed after that.
yes, a very hard obsession. So this is my first time rewatching The Crow after having seen The Dark Knight. So The Dark Knight is quite fresh in my memory, and it really like bowled me over with just how much you can do scene by scene comparisons. Thinking of Heath Ledger's Joker in particular, and I don't want to dwell too much on this, but there are just some scenes that are literally like you can have them parallel, and I think people have like literally compared them like, you know, scene by scene. The famous one is where Eric gate crashes Top Dollar's meeting with all his associates, and they're all sitting around the table, and, you know, in walks Eric, and just, like, carnage ensues. Obviously, we get that scene in The Dark Knight where Joker walks in and he gate crashes the mob meeting. Even in the first scene where Eric comes back and he's in his loft and he's putting on his makeup, the white face paint, and you can see it on his fingers, like the remnants of it. I mean, that is obviously something that Nolan took into
like
The Dark Knight as well.
The mouth, and I think if you look at Fun Boy, or not Fun Boy, the one that dies in the car crash,
T-Bird,
he kind of looks like he's been Chelsea smiled.
It looks like there's burn marks on either side.
Yeah,
like someone's scorched it,
like a scarred smile.
Yeah, totally.
Little things like, I think at the end of Batman Begins, when the Narrows are covered in the fear toxin, is very reminiscent of, you know, Detroit in this movie. Dark Knight Rises, when we see a flaming bat on one of the bridges, kind of looks like the flaming crow in this one.
Crow, that's such a fantastic scene. Also, like near the end where Top Dollar and Eric are fighting on the rooftop, and Top Dollar's holding Sarah, and Eric is like, "Let her go." All right.
Very poor choice of words.
Like Chris Nolan, right? Like the thing is they are so profound. There's even a whole scene where Top Dollar is talking about, you know, how Devil's Night is all about embracing anarchy and chaos. Like, there are so many moments, but I have yet to find an interview where Chris Nolan talks about the influence of The Crow. I can't find, like, he's talking about how he spoke with Heath Ledger about A Clockwork Orange and a couple of other movies, but I've never seen him reference The Crow, which I find really interesting, just considering how stark the comparisons are.
I wonder if it's something he's not willing to do purely based on the fact that Heath Ledger also died.
Well, this is another thing. So
would that be something else that would class The Crow as being a cursed movie, as if someone who was a film that was massively influenced by it also had the death of their star?
Both 28.
Yeah.
Both never got to see their finished work on their masterpiece.
Yeah. And it's like, obviously Heath wouldn't have got to do any of the promo for The Dark Knight, so he couldn't have been asked who his influences were.
I mean, there's just something in the physicality as well, because Brandon Lee, you know, I mean, gorgeous guy, like broad shoulders and
tall.
You know, like this really strong jawline, and you know, like the long leather coat that he wears as well. And Heath Ledger, absolutely drop dead gorgeous man, strong jaw, broad shoulders. It's like Chris Nolan knew what he was doing.
After he gate crashes the mob boss's meeting and he kind of walks away, it really reminded me of Heath when he's like got the grenades, he's like, I'll blow this out, watch the way he walks back. Like, the mannerisms are so similar.
There's a lot of mannerisms. Again, like Heath Ledger famously had the Joker diary, like when he was locked away in his hotel room for 6 weeks and keeping this diary of like pictures of like the characters from movies and lines, like quotes and stuff. The Crow is not in there. As far as like the pages that I've seen anyway, like the online, like the Crow is not there. So it's one of those scenes where the inspiration is clearly there, but it's also invisible at the same time.
Yeah.
It's strange. But anyway, the Crow, we got to talk about some of these villains as well. Like, we got to talk about some of the standout scenes, because yes, there is the tragedy of Brandon, and you can't disassociate from it, but the movie works on its own. Like, even if you could remove that element, this is a movie that is fantastically well made.
Yeah.
So let's go through the baddies. At the very top, we have Top Dollar, who's kind of like the leader of the gang. And we have Tintin, we have Funboy, we got T-Bird, and then we got Skank.
Skank.
Now, going back to Shelley and Eric's murder, Top Dollar was not there that night, but the others were. But Top Dollar clearly knew that his boys were going to kill Eric and Shelley that night. He knew, or at least he knew about it afterwards, but he was, kind of like the ringleader, I guess. And yeah, one by one, Eric takes them out. So Tintin is the first one to go, where Eric gets him in an alley, and we find that he's been stabbed to death. I think mirroring all the places where the bullets hit Eric as well. It looks very similar. Like
he takes his coat as well.
He does take his coat, and we get Funboy. Now, Funboy, of course, played by Michael Massey. Massey was the actor that unfortunately ended up accidentally killing Brandon. I love this scene, because I think this is the first time, aside from maybe in the pawn shop, but this is the first time like we really see Eric's playfulness and mischievousness. Because he goes into the apartment, and Funboy's in bed with Darla, who also happens to be Sarah's mum, who's just off her face on heroin, morphine, whatever it is, and the two of them are just high as a kite in bed. And Funboy shoots Eric in the hand.
Yeah.
And Eric feigns pain. Like he walks away and he's like, oh. Like he's having fun with it.
Holds it up so to see it heal over.
Yeah, I love that. And then Darla runs away, runs into the bathroom to hide. And again, Funboy is just like, can't believe what he's seeing. And I just love that line because there's blood everywhere at this point. And he's like, look what you've done to my sheets.
Oh, God. Look what you've done to my sheets.
There's there is comedy and dark humor in this movie, but it is there. But it leads into one of my all-time favourite moments, where he drags Funboy into the bath, puts the water on him, and he goes to Darla, who's obviously like cowering in fear at this point, thinking, oh my God, what is this man that looks like a clown? What is he going to do to me? And he gets her in front of the mirror, and he gets her arm, and he draws out, like, purges the morphine from her arm, and you can see it dribbling out. And then he looks at her in the eyes, and he's like, your daughter is out on the streets. Go to her, like, be a mother and look after her. And she does.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
We'd like to shout out our groovy members. We appreciate everything you do for this channel and helping us grow. You guys are awesome. Eric and Shelley were essentially parents to Sarah.
Yeah. I love that whole sequence. And again, it just gives this extra like complexity to Eric. He is an avenging angel, but there's so much more going on there.
Yeah.
As well. And I love like Darla's reaction to him as well. Like, she's still scared, but you can also see like the clarity in her face, like when the morphine comes out of her body, and she's like, okay. I really, really like that.
Yeah.
After Funboy, we get T-Bird. And this is, again, one of my favourite sequences in the whole movie. T-Bird, he gets him in the car, he straps him in. And
T-Bird's the guy who likes to start fires.
Yeah. And I think with every kill, Eric likes it to be known who he is. He wants them to remember, like, why he's doing that, why they're going to be killed. And T-Bird, the guy who plays T-Bird, David Patrick Kelly, I think he gives a really good performance here.
Everybody does in this movie.
Yeah. And he realises who Eric must be, and he can't, like, quite assimilate what he's actually seeing. Like, he says that line, doesn't he? Repeats it over and over. Like, no one comes back. Like, there is no coming back. He can't come back.
There ain't no coming back. There ain't no coming back.
He's so, like, shocked by what is happening. And then you get that amazing moment, like the car going over the docks
and blowing up.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And then you get the crow, like the outline of the crow. I love it. Skank, obviously, he's killed. He's thrown out the window when Eric gate crashes the mob meeting. And then this kind of Top Dollar and a few of his associates are left.
Yeah, one of which is Tony Todd.
One of which is Tony Todd, who's kind of like his right-hand man,
Yeah.
I guess. Top Dollar also has a love interest, Micah, and I don't know if you clocked it, but they are also brother and sister.
I did not clock that.
Yeah. It's referenced, I can't remember the line, but they are, like, it's incest.
Oh.
Brother and sister, like they're half brother and sister or something, but they are related. Just adds, like, this extra ickiness to that whole situation.
Yeah. That kind of leads to the finale, which is in a church, when they've kidnapped Sarah. Micah, she has a thing for eyes, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does. She
like,
does.
The occult, and I think they kind of realize that it's the crow that gives Eric his abilities. So Tony Todd shoots the crow, doesn't kill it, but that just seems to sever its power with Eric, and he becomes vulnerable. If you're going to have a battle between the final two and one of them's immortal, it kind of takes the stakes out of it a little bit. So it would take his power away when he needs it the most.
Exactly.
And I love that whole fight on the top of the church. It's obviously raining, very, very heavily raining. You have the iconic scene of him coming through the doors.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. The whole finale.
Yeah. Michael Wincott plays Top Dollar, and I have to say he is one of the best baddies. Like, he's so in his voice. Like, he's just has that really kind of like mellifluous tone to, like, he needs to be a bad guy in everything he does. Like, he is so good. And yeah, that final showdown is wonderful. And Eric transfers them, like, Shelley's last memories into him, so he gets to experience 30 hours of her pain and her anguish, like in his last moments as well. Something really poetic about that, I guess.
So he ends up falling and landing on a gargoyle, like gets impaled.
Yeah.
And we previously saw this gargoyle, like, it takes the rainwater and spits it out of his mouth, and then that changes the blood, obviously, after he lands on it. It's a gorgeous looking film.
It is. There's some really, like, amazing filmmaking choices that's made as well. There's the scene as well, we keep talking about it, but where Eric breaks in and he kills all of, like, the cronies in the mob meeting. And for a while, because there's a lot of kills in that, Eric is just taking them out one by one, and he's like, you're all gonna die. And I can't remember the band that's playing, but there's a classic, like, grunge rock song that's playing overhead. But then one of the bodies falls from the building and it goes into a band that's playing beneath, like a rock concert. And then as soon as that happens, we realise that the song we're hearing was playing diegetically in the movie. And then as soon as that happens and the band stops and everyone runs away, we get this lovely score. Like, the movie turns from this rock anthem into, like, this really ominous score that just sees off the rest of that scene where Eric's killing off the last few goons. And I just, like, it's so well done. Like, that transition from, like, frenzy and rock and roll to death. It's such a really, really good scene. There's lots of them like that as well throughout the movie. And as we say, Alex Proyas directed this. He didn't really go on to do a huge ton of stuff. A couple of things here and there, but not as prolific as you probably would have imagined.
Yeah,
maybe.
It would have been great if he went on to do more films, because especially considering what they had to deal with to be able to get a movie that is as good as this.
Yeah, I mean,
it's incredible.
Naturally, I cried when we most recently rewatched this.
Yeah, I like this film, but I discovered this in my 20s, like my mid-20s. So I watched this and I'm like, oh, this is sad. But you've had this film be a part of your life for a much longer than I have.
There's a lot of scenes that get me, but specifically there's a moment with Eric and Sarah in the graveyard, and I'm paraphrasing a lot, but I think Sarah basically says, like, I love you both and I miss you both and I wish you could stay. And he gives her Shelley's engagement ring and he puts it on a string and he puts it around her and he's like, it's yours. She would have liked you to have this, and now that you've got it, you'll never ever forget her. And it's just a beautiful moment. And there's also, that very final quote as Sarah narrates it. And she's like, buildings burn, people die, but real love lasts forever. Oh, it's so lovely.
The way to have them live on is to never stop loving them. Buildings burn, people die, but real love is forever.
It's a tragic movie, but it's a beautiful film.
Yeah. It absolutely is. Do you have any more notes on this one?
Soundtrack is banging.
Oh, soundtrack is back. That's one thing. The 90s, the 90s were really good with soundtracks.
Yeah.
I feel like the 90s isn't appreciated for the type of movies that it did put out.
The Cure, Nine Inch Nails.
Like, this film feels very reminiscent in a lot of ways. Very different, but also very reminiscent of, like, late 80s action. With a lot of the action scenes. Like, you could put a lot of, like, the one-liners he does. You could imagine someone like Arnie doing it. So it's taken, like, action tropes and put them in a completely new setting, essentially reinventing what action could become. But ironically, I don't think we'd actually really see that evolution until John Wick came out.
Yeah.
Because I think you could. John Wick is also a revenge tale.
It is, yeah.
And has a lot of like incredible action sequences. I think must pull a bit of inspiration from this as well.
I can't imagine Chad ever forgot his experience on The Crow. I mean, I don't know how you could have, given the circumstances. But I guess I want to end this on just reiterating that, yes, this movie is infamous because of what happened to Brandon Lee. But at the same time, I think his performance, it really does stand out in and of itself. Like, it sounds obvious, but he did not need to die for this to be considered a good performance. Like, you can tell this is a very talented actor. And he's really making it his own. And also, like, I saw interviews of Brandon talking about the role, like, as, you know, like, when they were on set, and he's very clearly passionate about the story. Very articulate young man. It's like, you know, like, for 28, like, he was very, I don't know, like, there was something very romantic about him, I think, and just, like, his way of thinking and interpreting the role. So, it's just a movie that's worth seeing, and it is a movie that, you know, I don't think it should be forgotten, for many reasons. But I think the movie should exist, and I think it can beyond the tragedy that's associated with it.
Like I said, when the new one comes out, if anything, it'll just get people talking about this one again. Even if that, I feel like that the new one is hated before it's even come out. We will give it a chance. We will talk about it, and we will review it. Because I like Bill Skarsgård, and I want it to be good.
I think it's sort of like, again, sorry to keep going back to this as a comparison, but it works. Like, when Jared Leto was announced as the new Joker, and that first image was revealed, and everyone was like, what the fuck?
I've seen people compare Jared Leto's Joker to Bill Skarsgård's Crow, because the tattoos are similar.
Like, you're not Heath Ledger. Like, you get out of here. Like, Heath was perfect. Heath owns this role. No one could ever play the Joker again. Heath Ledger is my favourite, but, like, that aside, you can't just allow an actor
Hollywood will always move on. We've had two Jokers
since.
We've had... It was what? Bill Skarsgård's actually the fourth Crow after Eric. After Brandon. He's just the first one to play Eric again.
Yes. Like, we will always have Brandon's performance. We will always have this movie to go back to and rewatch. And I think just my personal point of view, like, not just for this movie, but just in general with films, like, you can't ever take an actor's performance away, especially when something tragic happened to them. But that also doesn't mean that the role should just die with them, if that makes sense. It's like, this new one might be trash, but that's still okay. It still has a right to be made, and you know, things have a right to be adapted. So that's
if anything, if it can just reintroduce people or remind people of the original movie, then in my mind it's still doing a good thing. We'll see it, and obviously we'll let you know what our opinion on it is. I kind of want to delve into at least the first sequel, because I've heard that has like glimmers of being a good film.
Yes, the only sequel I remember seeing is the one with Edward Furlong, and that was not good.
No,
unsurprisingly.
Thanks a lot, guys. Yeah, let us know if you've watched this movie, and what you think of it. Like,
yeah, what's your favorite scene?
Yeah, what's your favorite scene in the movie? So, thanks a lot, guys. And also, are you going to go see the new one? Did you even know that there was a new one coming out?
What do you think of the trailer?
I mean, the trailer does tell the entire tale of the film.
It's not good.
Stuff I would have quite liked to have just seen in the film. Anyway, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.